Welcome to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in Iran and the Middle East in the past 24 hours. Today's picture across the Middle East and the wider system is shifting again, but not in the way that comes from a single dramatic event. This is more about the machinery underneath the headlines starting to lock into place, while the political disagreements that caused the conflict are still very much unresolved. And the center of gravity remains the same: the US-Iran interim framework and everything orbiting it. The most important development right now is that Washington is actively trying to stabilize its Gulf partnerships while simultaneously managing an agreement that many of those same partners are deeply uneasy about. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is moving through the Gulf, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, essentially on reassurance duty after Iran's wartime strikes hit several of these countries directly. That matters because this is not theoretical diplomacy anymore. These governments have been under fire, literally, and now they are being asked to trust that a broader US-Iran deal won't leave them exposed in the next round of escalation. Rubio's message is consistent. The US is not stepping back from Gulf security commitments, and any final arrangement with Iran is supposed to preserve regional stability, not weaken it. But underneath that reassurance campaign, there is still a major unresolved issue. The structure of the deal itself is not fully aligned between Washington and Tehran. One of the biggest friction points is still the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is continuing to push a concept that goes beyond basic maritime coordination. Instead of simply reopening shipping lanes, Tehran is trying to shape a longer-term governance model for the strait, involving Oman and other Gulf states. On the surface, this is framed as logistics, navigation, and maritime safety. In practice, it is about influence over one of the most important energy choke points on the planet. And that is where the quiet strategic contest is forming. The U.S. position is straightforward. International waterways cannot become revenue-generating or controlled transit systems under any regional monopoly. That is a hard line. But even with that position, conversations among Gulf states, Oman, Qatar, and others are moving toward a broader regional maritime framework. Some of it involves coordination mechanisms, some of it involves fees or administrative structures, and all of it reflects a reality that the post-conflict order is still being written. At the same time, maritime traffic is recovering, but not cleanly. Shipping through Hormuz is increasing again, oil prices are easing, and the immediate crisis phase is fading. But operators are still treating the region as partially constrained. Alternate routes are being used, and maritime authorities are coordinating managed movement through safer corridors. Even now, the system is functioning more like a controlled reopening than a fully normal trade route. And that leads into the second major layer: energy and economic stabilization. Oil markets have reacted quickly to the return of shipping flows. Prices have dropped back toward pre-conflict levels, and that has eased some of the immediate pressure on global markets. But the deeper issue is that normalization is not just about price, it is about confidence. Insurance, routing clarity, and long-term security guarantees are still not fully settled. So even as barrels move, the system is still carrying a risk premium. Now shift to Lebanon, because this is where diplomacy and battlefield reality are directly colliding. Israel and Hezbollah remain locked in a tense standoff in southern Lebanon, and Israeli forces are still operating inside a declared security zone. At the same time, US-backed discussions are trying to build a phased arrangement that would bring Lebanese armed forces into control of selected areas through what are being described as pilot zones. The idea is gradual transition. Israeli positions shift out, Lebanese forces move in, and U.S. support helps build capacity and verification. But on the ground, nothing is synchronized yet. Israel is maintaining its positions and signaling no immediate withdrawal under current conditions. Lebanese officials and U.S. intermediaries are still trying to negotiate sequencing. Hezbollah is rejecting the framework entirely. So you end up with three parallel realities: diplomatic planning, military positioning, and non-state armed resistance, all moving independently. And in that environment, even small incidents carry outsized weight. Israeli forces are also reporting that they have encircled a major Hezbollah underground tunnel complex in southern Lebanon, near the Ali al-Taher area. This is not a small tactical position. It is part of a deeper infrastructure network that has been built over years, designed for sustained operations and concealment. Israeli assessments suggest fighters are trapped inside, with the situation drifting toward either surrender, attrition, or further escalation. The key strategic point here is not just the tunnel itself, it is what it represents. Hezbollah's long-term ability to embed hardened infrastructure inside contested terrain, and Israel's willingness to push deep to dismantle it even while diplomatic talks are ongoing. And Iran sits over all of this, tying Lebanon directly into its broader negotiating posture. Tehran has made clear that Lebanon is not separate from the US-Iran framework. Iranian leadership is linking regional ceasefire dynamics to Israeli withdrawal expectations in Lebanon. That effectively turns Lebanon into a parallel bargaining track inside the larger diplomatic process. Now move to Iraq, where pressure is building in a different form. The Iraqi government is trying to bring Iran-aligned militias under full state control. Prime Minister Ali al-Zaidi has issued directives requiring armed groups to formally integrate into national command structures. Some factions are complying. Others, including hardline Iran-linked groups, are resisting. This is where U.S. leverage becomes visible. Financial pressure, security cooperation limits, and diplomatic signaling are all being used to push Baghdad toward consolidation of armed authority under the state. But Iraq's internal balance has always depended on managing both U.S. and Iranian influence simultaneously, and that makes enforcement uneven. So even when orders are issued, implementation is slow, partial, and politically fragile. Now add another layer, Iran's financial adaptation. Sanctions pressure has not stopped Iranian-linked financial flows. Instead, it has shifted them. Crypto-based systems are being used to route funds through exchanges, decentralized protocols, and multi-step transaction chains designed to obscure origin and destination. These networks include links to state-affiliated actors and shadow banking channels tied to broader regional activity. Even during periods of heightened conflict and disruption inside Iran, these flows did not collapse. They adjusted, rerouted, and continued operating. That is important because it shows sanctions are shaping behavior, but not fully constraining operational capacity. On the nuclear track, uncertainty remains high. There is still no fully agreed framework on inspections, access to sites, or verification timelines. U.S. messaging suggests a push toward broad monitoring and enforcement capacity. Iranian messaging continues to resist firm commitments on inspection scope and timing. That gap between political announcements and operational verification is still unresolved. And without that verification layer, the agreement remains structurally incomplete. Inside Israel and the West Bank, another pressure point is emerging. A proposed legislative move would expand Israeli administrative authority over archaeological and heritage sites in the West Bank. While framed as cultural and preservation policy, critics argue it effectively expands Israeli control over contested territory and accelerates settlement-linked administrative reach into sensitive areas. That adds another layer of friction into an already saturated regional environment where nearly every theater is active at once. Thanks for listening and being part of this community. If you're finding value here, a review, comment, or share helps more people stay informed. We also publish a daily intel brief on Substack at restrictedhandling.substack.com, where we go deeper on Russia, China, Iran, the Middle East, and the DPRK. Stay safe and have a great week.